Joined by the Chief Executive of CPA Australia, Alex Malley. Thanks for joining us, Alex Malley. What do you make of this scheme by the Prime Minister, which he says will reduce complexities and duplication in the system?
Well, I think you've got to look at Australia's future and decide whether we are actually a holistic nation that's aiming to move towards Asia and build our future, or whether we're going to break our country up into states and have tax systems within each of those states that fundamentally will create a competition between states and presumably, following on from that, take on the look of the US and Canada, where people leave a state based on tax incentives. We believe that Australia's future is in a holistic model, and that holistic tax reform is the battle that neither party have shown any interest in, and that's why we're finding ourselves having these conversations, which do take us back to World War II, Tony.
Alex Malley, isn't competition a good thing, though? Is it one of those things that keeps states potentially on their toes, keeps them sharp about where that revenue is going?
Competition's a great thing, Kumi, if it's between Australia and other nations that allow us to build our employment profile and our relevance in our sector and in our Asia-Pacific region. When you've got competition, which means that people retiring may go to one state rather than the other because it suits their hospital needs, that's not the sort of competition that creates a productive society. The big plummeting tax in Australia is personal income taxes. And to suggest that we're going to allow a 1% reduction at a federal level and then give a 1% increase to the state level and everything's even makes no accounting or mathematical sense. Each state has a different set of scenarios, different populations, different demographics, different problems. So by allowing this, remembering that the federal government's going to put in about $5 billion for the next few years, and the Prime Minister has then said the states can raise those taxes. So in the end, this is about avoiding holistic tax reform, and one could argue that this is a GST without the efficiencies of what a GST would have done had anyone had the courage to include that in a proper debate. Couldn't
there be an argument mounted, though, that because the states pay the bills largely for education and health, why not allow them to raise the revenue that's pertinent to their bills and demands?
Well, that's fine, Tony, and you can mount that argument, but then it mounts the argument of why we have three tiers of government. So if we're going to be a state-driven nation and we're going to give the powers back to the states, then let's declutter it and reduce the whole Commonwealth model and have two levels of government. We've talked about this as a nation for years, that we've got too many levels of government, but all of a sudden we're going to empower the states to raise personal income taxes when that is plummeting nationally. This also will mean that people may vote in or vote out a particular state based on their costings at the time, when in fact the incidence of tax at the federal level allows us to have a consistency as a nation. Right now we are becoming irrelevant internationally. We've got Ireland with a 12.5% company tax rate, London, the UK with 17%. People are leaving this nation as enterprises, as individuals, because we can't compete. And we're going to convert it into a broken up Australia where we'll fight over population. In the 70s, people got in caravans and drove to Queensland because Joh Bjelke-Petersen abolished death taxes. This is just going to cause a caravan car park, and we're going to need to have infrastructure on roads if we're serious about the fact that people will move between states. In the US, people leave New York regularly to go to Nevada or Florida because of the local tax scenario that's still supplemented by a federal tax scenario. Is that what we want for Australia? If we're going to have a debate, let's talk about the difference between a federal country that needs to stay relevant as a nation as opposed to a broken interstates internal competition. That does not take Australia forward.
OK, the Chief Executive of CPA Australia, Alex Malley, will you appreciate your time this afternoon?
Thank you very much.
Thanks.